Travel around the world is forecast to top 1.8 billion tourists annually by the year 2030. And moving millions of people from place to place takes a major toll, from emissions to pollution to pressure on ecosystems and local communities. Tourism will once again come into focus this week as UN-led climate talks get underway. In the final part of our special on green travel, I meet the change makers, taking the journey to net zero one trip at a time. About 1 hour from Phuket's International Airport at the edge of the Andaman Sea lies a sustainable resort built to have as little impact on the environment as possible. Part of that green effort at Khao Lak Merlin involves a partnership with this woman. Aliza Napativamnoy says that when it comes to tourism, there's more to waste than meets the eye.
When we talk about service waste, it's never really something that's tangible, like waste that you can actually see and touch or be in a warehouse. So how can we actually create opportunities there? So those were like the beginning of the questions that we were asking ourselves. How to convert spare capacity into creating impact and channeling funding into that social impact area.
Think of spare capacity as the stuff a business can't use, like unsold hotel rooms or leftover spa packages. Through Social Giver, a social enterprise Aliza co-founded in 2015, that spare capacity is sold online at a discount. Half the profits might go to projects like reforestation and people in the community. It means, for example, that just one night in that pool villa could send a child to school for 3 years.
We see a huge demand in this. You see people who want to be able to vote with where their money is going with social media, and a lot of people not just sharing about what is available out there, but more of what are the problems in our communities and in the environment that is actually escalating extremely fast.
The value of sustainable travel is starting to get across in the Asia-Pacific region, and we're mostly getting that message online. In 2023, people splurged on vacations and international travel, despite the high costs of airfares. But there are signs the pent-up demand is starting to wane. In its place, domestic vacations have emerged as a sustainable travel idea, with a whopping 90% of internet users saying they have one planned next year. Most, especially younger people, express concern about their carbon footprint. But are we skating on thin ice, even as the demand rises for Insta moments in nature?
People switch off when they want to travel in terms of sustainability knowledge and principles. You need to make sustainability a way of life. And I see evidence of that happening in the younger generations. Your Gen Zs or your post-millennial crowd. They understand that the climate and the world that they inherit from us is not going to be in the best of health, and they are taking up that mantle of sustainability very rapidly through civil society actions, through being influencers or spreading the message around sustainability, even in travel or in everyday life.
And travel influencers globally have emerged as a big driver of that message as tourism and climate change acceleration become increasingly intertwined. Award-winning filmmaker Michaela Guzzi left the corporate world 13 years ago to set up online travel platform Oh the People You Meet. It's a global collective of creators who curate content with the planet's health front and center.
Sustainability and climate change, that's all of our problem. We all share planet Earth together, and it's our home, and we should act as neighbors to protect our planet.
For Ms. Guzzi, a step toward accountability with green travel is one giant leap for mankind, and she's learning from legends.
Of people who understand we've got to help people as well as animals, and to help people and animals we must save the environment, so it's all interconnected. So brave.
When I interviewed Dr. Jane Goodall, we filmed with her in Sierra Leone, and she described sustainability as a three-legged stool. And that is, you can protect the wildlife and you can protect the environment. But if the local people don't feel the positive impact of the inbound tourism dollar, the stool will never stand on its own.
Ms. Ghazi is a seasoned traveller, and she's cautious about the misuse of the term sustainable tourism.
We encountered these situations that actually seemed good, like we were doing good, like we were going to be giving back to the people, the places and the purposes that we were filming. And actually when I got there, I was like, something feels really off. And in one particular occasion, it revolved around orphanage tourism.
As people search for options to travel with purpose, controversial themes have emerged, blurring the lines between doing good and doing harm. One of them is voluntourism. It markets itself as a seamless blend of charity and leisure. Organising trips for over 10 million people annually, voluntourism agencies reap billions from their clients' good intentions. Cambodia has one of the fastest growing rates of this type of voluntourism in the world, with orphanages at the heart. Activists say the lack of official oversight can leave children vulnerable to abuse.
I empower our travelers and our viewers and our followers and our fans to be responsible. They need to do their part too, and part of that is doing research and asking questions in advance. And so you need to ask your tour guide or the local hotel operator, is this actually a legitimate operation? I think it's a really fine line between authentically connecting with people when you're visiting a place, but people are not for show.
What motivates travel is complex. An opportunity to do good, to not be who you are ordinarily from 9 to 5, or a response to the fear of missing out as climate change takes its toll on fragile places. A 2016 study revealed the decline in the health of Australia's Great Barrier Reef had been motivating more and more travellers to visit. And so another phrase was coined: last chance tourism. And today, travel to Greenland's melting glaciers or Arctic Canada's ice sheets for so-called doomsday tourism is also on the rise. The rush to see behemoths of broken ice before they melt away.
They might learn about what is sustainability, they might learn what is responsible climate action, but do they practice it? Whether or not this messaging can actually penetrate to these people who are more resources to travel often, that's going to be a problem.
Tourism will happen, whether we are involved in that, whether any individual country or company is involved in that or not. This is a phenomena that is so global and so impactful that it will continue to grow, and making sure that it doesn't go off the rails is something for which an active investment needs to happen. It's the whole ecosystem basically of tourism that needs to be elevated to deal with challenges into the future. Yeah.
Oh, Dawn. If we look at, I was interested in what you mentioned about voluntourism. So essentially it's trying to have your climate cake and eat it as well. So that suggests people are not actually as concerned about sustainable travel as they claim to be.
It's difficult because certain themes have sort of arisen around sustainable tourism that aren't necessarily sustainable at all. And that's what Ms. Michaela Ghazi was talking about, the filmmaker and travel expert. She's trying to point out that we all might make mistakes. It's important to do research beforehand. Not everybody does. A lot of the statistics about what we know of how people sort of behave when it comes to tourism come from what we've learned online, because a lot of us are getting our influence about travel or where to go because of what we see. That tends to be one of the first sort of points of contact. What market research firm GWI does is they do this annual survey every year where they track over 1 million people and how they behave.
So your 60% just now, young people being concerned about sustainable travel, that's not actually a time comparison.
Well, it basically occurs, it's over time, over a 12-month period. And the interesting part about it is that although 60% of individuals that they track said that they care more about being eco-conscious, they're not necessarily doing anything about it, or they tend not to. Here's what senior market analyst Joe Ling Sun had to say about what we're seeing with travel by younger people.
Nature vacations are one of the top in people's list to travel, especially for Gen Z. Unfortunately, we are seeing people who say that they have concern for the environment dropping year on year. It's mostly due to everything that's been happening around. Our study has shown that across over 50 interest data points, most of the interests are dropping, and unfortunately, concern in environmental issues is one of them. That's not to say that consumers are apathetic about their environment, but it's definitely taking up less of their headspace with everything that's been going around the world.
Yeah, so the irony here, Wei-Su, is that it seems that people under the age of 40, they want to travel to places of nature, but they're less concerned about actually demonstrating that they're going to do anything about it or be eco-conscious. That data also seems to point to the fact that post-pandemic, COVID actually may have had a negative impact on how we perceive how much we want to travel. It's not necessarily a concern for people. And here's what one of my interviewees, senior tourism specialist Wouter Schalken, said. He's from the Asian Development Bank. He talked about how ready destinations might be as a result of all of this rise in the demand for travel.
Every social media outlet, individual social media outlet, has become a promotional entity. So all of a sudden there's influx of visitation to specific sites for which these sites and areas were never capacitated to deal with. And I think that's a huge issue. And we see that being repeated in many countries. Even some of the countries who dealt with it before are seeing some of those trends occurring. And others are sneaking up to situations that can have the same kind of level of impact.
Also, forcing responsibility on social media users, this is going to continue.
Yeah, and I think first thing to do, what's your carbon footprint before you travel? That's a simple thing to actually begin to try.
Do you care?
Exactly.